This question is phrased in a way that might be a little bit different than what we're used to. It says, which of the listed values gives one of the zeros for the equation x squared minus 2x minus 6 is equal to 9. So sometimes we get something like this and it will say solve the equation or find the values of x. But this one doesn't say that. It asks us for the zeros, and that word zeros is the same as an x-intercept, which is often, probably less common, but sometimes called the root or roots of the equation. Okay, but it is asking us to solve for values of x that will make that true. So we have different strategies for doing so. Sometimes we try to isolate x, but in this case, if we do so by maybe adding 6, we see that we have an x squared and a 2x still remaining on the left side of the equation, and that causes some issues. So our strategy for this will be to set the equation equal to 0 before we solve. So let's do that by first subtracting 9 to both sides. And that would give us x squared minus 2x. Negative 6 minus 9 is negative 15. And now that equation is set equal to 0. So we're being asked to solve this equation. It is a quadratic equation, degree 2 polynomial. So one option is you could use the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula, when you use it, will either give you no real solutions, one real solution, or most of the time it will give you 2 solutions. So you're welcome to do that as a strategy. I'm going to show a different method for solving this, and that would be to solve by factoring. And there's lots of ways that you can factor or may have seen factoring done, but they're all the same thing. So what you're trying to do is find 2 values. We're undoing the distributive property in essence, but you find 2 values that multiply to get the product of the first and last value. So this is like a 1. 1 times negative 15 is negative 15. So you can organize it in a lot of ways. Sometimes I like to show this just organization method of an x to say we're going to be looking for 2 numbers that multiply to get negative 15 and add to get that middle value, which is negative 2. So you're finding factors of 15 that multiply to get negative 15 and add to get negative 2. If the product is negative, these 2 values have to be different in sign. So if I look at this, I can say, all right, well, 5 and 3 are 2 factors of 15, but it has to multiply to be negative 15, so one of them has to be negative, and it has to add to be negative 2. So I need the 5 to be negative 5. They will multiply to get negative 15, and they will add to get negative 2. Okay, in this case, when your leading coefficient is 1, you can just use those 2 values and immediately factor. So I can now write this as exactly like I see it. X minus 5 times x plus 3. And what we're saying there is that what's written here, x squared minus 2x minus 15, is the same as x minus 5 times x plus 3. If we multiplied this through and combine like terms, we'd get back to the green. So those 2 things are the same equation, just in a different form. One's in standard form, one's in factored form. So this is set equal to 0, which means this can be set equal to 0. And we're being asked to find one of the zeros, one of the x values that when plugged into the equation, it will give you 0. Okay, so if I look at this, I have some value, this first parentheses, times another value, that second parentheses. If I can get either of those to equal 0, then 0 times the other will be 0. So I look at the first equation and I say, okay, what value of x will make x minus 5 0? And that's just 5. Okay, and what value of x will make the second parentheses 0? And that's negative 3. So those are my 2 values that will make this equation equal to 0. So when I look at my answers over here, I see that's close, but it's negative 5 and we have positive 5. Right here, negative 3 and we have negative 3. Okay, so that's going to end up being our answer. So we can confidently now say that our answer is C, negative 3. One more thing is one ACT strategy is to just plug in your answers into the equation and see if it makes the statement true. So we could have plugged in these values. Might take some time, and as long as we do it right, make sure you put -3 in parentheses if you're using a calculator right there. And if the left side equaled the right side, then that would be a solution to that equation. But zeros was kind of the key here, and so we set it equal to 0 and did so and found -3c by factoring.